Hello there. In the last video, I made a first-person Crossy road game, and I'll be finishing that up in this video. Now, there's still a lot to be done, but first of all, I need to somehow keep the player to stay on the crosswalk. Right now, you can just kinda walk wherever and avoid the cars. There's really no consequences for that. Now, I could just add some invisible boundaries, like what most games would do, but instead I made it so that every time the player walks off the crosswalk, a Boeing plane spawns in and crashes into the player, killing them. You know, the game is supposed to be realistic. The plane looks like a pretty nice addition to the game, but it only appears when you step out of bounds. So I added a couple more planes that just fly around in the background, so the background doesn't look as empty. I then implemented the high score system so that it keeps track of your best score. The cars still look a little repetitive, even though I made 5 different types of vehicles with different models. So I made a script for that, which chose different color materials randomly. Right now, the player just kinda stands there after touching a vehicle and dying, but I want the player to ragdoll, so I turned it into one. The ragdoll physics don't go really well with the existing animations and controls, so I had to create a new ragdoll model of the player that just replaces the current model when the player dies. The camera frequently moves into the x-axis for some reason when I changed the focus onto the ragdoll, which was pretty frustrating, and several hours passed before I solved it by just making a new camera. Then I added night and day by just changing the strength of the light. Now nobody can say that this game isn't realistic. The game is still kinda boring, so I added 2 power-ups that could spawn in on the safe zones between the crosswalks. One increases running speed and the other increases jump height. Of course, the actual power-ups won't be this powerful, though a problem occurs when the player goes too fast and doesn't detect the crosswalk properly. This causes the game to think that the player is out of bounds and spawns in the plane. I feel like it's a kind of funny bug to keep in, but I fixed it since spawning the plane is pretty much a death sentence, and I don't want anyone far ahead in the game to die of a bug. Another power-up is those traffic walking lights that you can turn on, which will pause all vehicles for a random amount of time. I then finished the part that I dread the most, adding sound effects. As the player gets enough jumping power-ups, it gets kinda OP since you can just jump over every single car. Along with upgraded running speed, it just covers such a huge area. And to solve this problem, obviously, flying cars. There's now also an immortal snail car that slowly chases after the player, which kills the player upon touch. It'll give the player a little more motivation to keep walking. The snail isn't too fast or too slow, so the player will have to constantly walk forward, because honestly it's pretty easy with enough power-ups and just scooting in between the cars. Hopefully the constant snail chase will make the player hurry up and maybe get hit by a car. I also made it so that the snail gets bigger with more distance traveled, so it just drives menacingly in the distance. I spent a couple hours playing and adjusting the settings so that the difficulty progresses somewhat reasonably. With the original settings, it would become sorta unplayable since I made the cars more likely to rotate the further you get in the game. This is supposed to make it harder without just increasing the car speed to insane amounts. But this results in blockages that just aren't passable. So I limited that to a certain extent, and any cars that collide with each other just get destroyed. So now the player can keep on playing forever and without having to rely on RNG to hope this doesn't happen, which happens a lot. And then just for fun, the cars honk at the player every once in a while. and the game is done. The game is on itch if you want to check it out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.